and welcome back. Before I start the first letter, I wanted to share a little more history with you about my great-great-grandfather. Philip R. Woodcock was born in Canajoharie, New York on January 16, 1840, and was raised in Springfield, New York, Otsego County. In 1860, at the age of 20, he married Roby Jane Pierce from Warren, New York, which is in Herkimer County. Their son, George Ellisworth, named after Philip's older brother, was born 2 years later on February 1st, 1862. As I mentioned previously, Philip enlisted as a private on July 23, 1862, with Company E, 121st Regiment, New York Volunteers, also known as Upton's Regulars, and he was attached to Slocum's Division, Bartlett's Brigade, and the Army of the Potomac under General McClellan. In August of 1862, he was promoted to corporal at Camp Schuyler in Mohawk, New York, and much later on in his tenure, he was commissioned as first lieutenant on March 14, 1865. On June 25, 1865, he received an honorable discharge and was mustered out near Hall's Hill, Virginia. The surrender at Appomattox was 2 months earlier, which he was present for. After the war, Philip made his way home and eventually went to work in Rochester, New York for Seidens and Gommenginger, sheet metal and heating contractors. After leaving there, he finished his career traveling for the Phillips and Clark Stove Company, which was based in Geneva, New York. His oldest son, who he refers to as Georgie in his letters, eventually became a wealthy businessman in Rochester, rising to vice president of the Sherwood Shoe Company. George never married, nor had any children, and he invested heavily in the early days of Eastman Kodak and was very successful. Philip and Roby also had 2 more children after the war, Charles Dewell Woodcock, who is my great-grandfather, the father of my grandmother, Roby Abercrombie. He eventually was with the Treeman King Hardware Company in Ithaca. And they had a daughter, Mary Louise Woodcock Newton, who later served in China as a missionary with her husband, the Reverend W.C. Newton, who was president of Bush Theological Seminary. Philip outlived his wife, Roby, by about 10 years. She passed away in 1903, which is the year my grandmother was born, and he passed away in 1913 at the age of 73. In his years following the war, he kept in touch with many of his fellow soldiers and participated in several reunions. He's quoted numerous times in Isaac Best's The History of the 121st New York State Infantry publication of 1921, which I will focus on in another video at a later date. So now here is his first letter. It was written on September 4th, 1862 at Fort Lincoln, on a piece of stationery that at the top says, "Desperate bayonet charge at Battle of Winchester, March 23rd, led by General Tyler." So here it is, the letter of September 4th, 1862.
My dearest wife, after a long time I sit down to write to you and let you know our whereabouts. We left Camp Schuyler last Saturday noon and went to Albany, and we had supper provided for us. Father and Mother Pierce and Fanny and Janice and Eddie came down to see me. I telegraphed to them from Herkimer. They brought me a nice large cake afterwards, which came good. About 9 o'clock, we took the boat for New York. We ran aground 2 or 3 times going down. We reached New York 9 o'clock next morning and encamped at City Park Barracks. The living was very poor. We stayed there until 8 o'clock next morning. I saw Waters, Fitch, and Bryston, and Hoagland, etc. We saw something of the city. We arrived at Philadelphia about 6 o'clock p.m. I lost my cap on the way, so I had to go and buy one, so I got a chance to see the city. We left Philadelphia about 2 o'clock in the morning, but it very dark and dangerous road, and we had to go slow. I stood sergeant of the guard all night, and I liked to froze on the outside of the cars. We got to Baltimore about 11 a.m., We got fed there about 4 o'clock p.m. We started then for Washington at 10 p.m. and felt our way all night, about 4 miles an hour. We found obstructions on the track, etc. We got a miserable breakfast in Washington. We marched through the streets and about the Capitol and then started where we are stationed now at Fort Lincoln. There was part of another regiment stationed here besides a company of artillery practicing with cannon. Our fort mounts 13 Columbiads, one large 8-inch mortar, and one rifled cannon, all loaded for action, for they have expected an attack here. Our guns have not all been distributed, and last night about 2 o'clock 2 companies were called out and arms given them. It looked pretty scary. We expected an attack all night. Our pickets shot into a band of 20 guerrillas, but I believe no one was killed. There is a rebel nest about 4 miles from here, which was kept up, the Confederate flag lately, but I believe it is down now. The companies that were before us wanted to go and sack the town, but were not strong enough force. I offered to go with them and take 25 men out of our company. There was 75 volunteered to go with me. Other sergeants done the same, and the whole regiment was about all offered to go. But we want fair play, and there won't be but 25 allowed out of a company. But I'm afraid that we won't get the chance. We do not know how long we shall stay here. We expected to go right south, but they stationed us here and wanted us to go to Harper's Ferry, where I hope they will station us, though I like it here first rate. 5 of us tents together, with the 2nd and 5th sergeant and the 3rd corporal and O.L. Parsons. We shall do our own cooking after this. We've had nothing to eat except at Albany, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington. 6 meals since last Saturday, 11 o'clock. We bought some things on the way until we arrived at Baltimore. After that, it was not safe to buy anything to put in our mouths. My duties all the whole march were to see that no unripe fruit pies and everything that was unhealthy was not sold along the line of our company, and a hard job I had, too. It was hard to keep our boys from eating anything, they were so hungry. Yesterday, they had a fight at Chain Bridge, 19 miles from here. We distinctly heard the firing. I tell you, it was something new to us. This morning, we've heard firing south of us, but I guess it must be the practicing from the forts, for Washington is completely surrounded by forts. We are in sight of Fort Massachusetts, where George was. It is about 1.5 miles from here. I saw it this morning. I tell you, the country looks hard here. It is nothing but bad and yellow soil and slaves. I don't blame George for not liking it here. I have not seen much slavery, and I do not want to. I have seen the results, and that is enough. In Baltimore, I saw 9 slaves arrested who had run away, and they supposed they had almost got away safe. It was tough, I tell you, to see them marched off so. One of them, a man of some considerable intelligence, as soon as he saw the soldiers, and there were 3 regiments of us, he cried like a baby and cried out, "Save us! Save us!" It was hard for 3,000 men to stand there and see those slaves marched by the whole of us, by those who follow the business of slave auctioning. There was not but 25 men that would have cleaned the whole city if the word had been given us. We expect the President and General McClellan to visit us in a few days. We have just received orders that tomorrow morning every man must have his gun loaded and inspected ready for action in expectation of attack, if this order is not done just to get the men used to such things. It is pretty evident that we shall soon see service. We are ready, though. We have never drilled a minute with musket, but I don't think it will amount to anything, though they are expecting a heavy attack on the city. But there are so many thousands of troops around it, and a rebel could not live long here. But I must close. I want you to write to me by return of mail, for I am anxious to hear from you and baby, and I want to hear where George is now. I am going to write to him, but I don't know where he is, but I hope he is safe. Now write immediately, and all the news. If I had more room, I would write more, but I shall write again soon. Direct to P.R. Woodcock, Company E, 121st Regiment, NYSV, Washington, D.C. Care Captain Campbell. Love me as ever. Goodbye.